Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. You know, Brian, we talk a lot about corn, soybeans, and wheat, but today we're going to focus on sunflowers and how to get good weed control in a crop where there really aren't that many options.
Well, we don't talk about sunflowers a lot. The other thing we don't talk about a lot is farm financing. We wanted to get to that today because we're getting questions this winter. Guys say, boy, it's going to cost a lot of money to put my crop in. I'm going to need a little bit more financing than normal. What are the options out there? We want to talk through that a little bit today.
Well, you may need a few extra dollars if you have our Weed of the Week to control. But before we get to that, we'll start with our farm basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
So Darren, I was on the plane the other day, flying to somewhere, I don't even remember. No, it was interesting. I was going to see some farms. And I was talking to a lady who was she was born in downtown Philadelphia, now lives in Detroit. So she had absolutely zero connection with the farm, and we're flying over all these pivots. And she said, what are all those circles out there? And why are they in circles? And why are they planting a different crop in the corners? And I just thought, you know, how many viewers of Ag PhD are non-farmers? And maybe they don't understand what those things are either. So we want to explain this a little bit so the next time when you're flying over some of these things, you know exactly what's going on.
What we're talking about here is fields that have a center pivot. So there's an irrigation pivot, and they say pivot because in the center there's a fixed point, and it pivots on that point. So it'll swing around all the way around the field in a circle, but unfortunately when you get to those square corners, that pivot can't quite reach them. So you're going to be able to water most of the field, but those corners are going to be dry farming.
Now, there are ways to handle that. There are some pivots that you can buy where they'll have extra swing attachments that could get into those corners, but typically that's not done. So what farmers will do is they will farm their entire field, obviously. They want to try to raise a crop on the whole field, but what do you do when you're in a very arid climate, you don't get a lot of rainfall, and you don't have irrigation in those corners? Are you going to raise the same crop?
Well, no, you're not, because, well, really, let's be honest about it. A lot of it ends up being corn in those fields, and it ends up being full season hybrids, and those hybrids they're going to run out of water before they can make it to maturity in the corners. So what some farmers will do is they'll plant soybeans in the corners, they'll plant alfalfa in the corners, or wheat in the corners, something different that can either mature a little bit earlier, or maybe doesn't have as much of a water demand as what corn does, just something to mix it up a little bit.
So when you see those corners out there, just understand those are not very productive areas of the field, and without irrigation, without that center pivot irrigation, the whole field would be non-productive. At least we've got most of the field now, usually in a quarter section, that would be 160 acres. You can figure there's roughly 130 or 135 acres that we're able to irrigate with that center pivot. So you've got roughly 25 to 30 acres that's kind of going to go to waste and go to one of these crops that Darren's talking about that hopefully aren't going to need quite as much moisture to grow and produce some type of crop.
And for some farmers, maybe they have livestock and they say, you know, I could sure use some oats, and maybe just a few acres of oats around the side would be just fine. Or for other farmers, they say, you know, I'll put soybeans there because they're pretty forgiving, and if we do catch a rain late in the season, they'll still make it. The problem gets to be if farmers choose to plant the same crop in those corners every year. Let's say that you had soybeans in the same corners every year. We've seen that on some farms, and they end up having some issues with soybean cyst nematodes or some disease that infects broadleaf crops like soybeans. So it's still a good idea for farmers to rotate crops in those corners, even though it may not be that many acres on their farm.
Well, once again, we just wanted you to know what those circles are when you're flying across much of the United States. It's just center pivot irrigation, and farmers are doing that typically in more arid or dry climates, because otherwise it would be very challenging for them to raise a crop, especially in a dry year like this one.
Well, one other thing that may be a challenge really any year is our Weed of the Week. Can you identify this week's weed?
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
In the world of four-wheel drive tractors, there is no name more powerful than Steiger. The newest addition to the powerful Case IH Steiger line is the Steiger Rowtrack, available at Titan Machinery. Designed for row crop use, the Rowtrack provides more maneuverability and reduces compaction while maintaining power and performance. It's available with 16, 18, or 24-inch tracks for row spacing as narrow as 20 inches. Visit your Titan Machinery dealer today to learn more about the Case IH Steiger Rowtrack. Titan Machinery, better solutions.
Back in 1966, Advanced Drainage Systems, Inc. was the first company to start manufacturing plastic agricultural drainage pipe in the United States. And today, ADS continues our leadership with superior pipe production and service capabilities. Our roots are firmly entrenched in the agriculture industry, and we're committed to helping farmers grow their business. With 54 manufacturing plants and 24 distribution yards throughout the world, you can count on ADS and our green striped pipe to be there when you need us. Advanced Drainage Systems, the green striped pipe you can count on.
Weed control in sunflowers. You know, Darren, it's really not that
I'm sorry,
difficult.
I was just about
and
going to
the
laugh,
options
Brian.
haven't changed. Yeah,
I was just about going to laugh
because Darren.
Other than going out with a cultivator or going out and pulling them by hand, you don't really have a lot of choices.
Well, you know, growing up, Darren and I used to have to pull sunflowers, and I could not believe the first time I saw a sunflower field. I just thought, what are those guys doing? How can they raise sunflowers? But sunflower is actually a great crop for a lot of farmers across the United States, and especially in the Dakotas, it's one of the most popular crops that's out there. So we wanted to talk about weed control in sunflowers. It's a little bit challenging, Darren.
And here's the reason why. You've got a broadleaf crop, and you know, with sunflowers, there are a lot of herbicides that kill sunflowers. Right. There aren't very many that kill other broadleaf weeds that don't kill sunflowers. So you've got great choices, pre-emerge, soil applied, those kind of things, but really post-emerge it gets limited. So you have to make good selections with your pre-emerge options.
Okay, so what I always tell sunflower growers is, look, don't even plant sunflowers if you don't want to put at least 2 pre-emerge herbicides down there. Yes, you can try getting by with 1 pre-emerge herbicide, but why would you want to try to get by when you have good yield potential, which we do in a lot of areas, and you have a good price, which we've actually had for the last few years. There is tremendous income potential in raising sunflowers, so don't chance it. Start with 2 good pre-emerge herbicides.
In conventional tillage, Treflan and Sonalan are great options. They're pretty forgiving if you get a little too deep or you don't get them mixed just perfectly in your soil, but they aren't very forgiving if you want to spray them on the surface of the soil and work them in later. They have high vapor pressure, and you'll start losing product almost instantly when you spray it on top of the ground.
But the reason why you want to use Sonalan is not only is it a better product, but it also has less carryover the following year. Yes, I know it costs more than Treflan, but the reason why, again, it's better and it carries over less. So use Sonalan instead of Treflan. In terms of no-till situations, that's where you want to use Prowl. Prowl is the only one of these 3 products that doesn't have high vapor pressure, so you can spray it out on top of the ground, wait for a rain, and then that will move it into the ground, and you'll get decent weed control. Now, Prowl isn't quite as good as what Sonalan is, but it doesn't have the carryover that Treflan does either.
All right, well, let's talk about that, Brian, because some farmers will say, all right, I'm in a dry part of the country, and here I've got, you know, this product Prowl that I'm going to lay on top of the ground. It needs water to get down into the soil and wash off my residue, and then it also needs some water to get into those weeds. So how do I ensure I get enough water?
Well, my suggestion would be to go spray it real early in the year. Here's the problem with that, though. You are also going to want to put Spartan out there because that's the only real good pre-emerge broadleaf choice you've got. You could use Spartan, Spartan Charge, or Spartan Advance, any one of those 3 combinations, but you've got to get Spartan out there somehow, some way. Okay, so if you want to save a trip, you're going to put your Prowl together with your Spartan. Well, Spartan has tremendous burn down activity, so why would you want to put the Spartan on real early when you would like to put the Prowl on? So that's kind of the question mark that everybody runs into. Yes, ideally we'd like to put the Prowl on super early, but ideally we'd like to put the Spartan on right around planting time. If you do that, you should get very good weed control most of the time. Now, if you end up in a complete drought, these products aren't going to work 100%. So you say, well, what are my post-emerge options? In terms of grass, there are many grass killers that are labeled for use post-emerge and very safe to the sunflowers. We talk about Select Max a lot on Ag PhD, but there are other products like Arrow, for example, and several others. So you've got a bunch of options there. But the problem is when it comes to broadleaf options, there's nothing. Well, there is one. You could go out there with Assert, but that's really hard on the sunflowers, and if it was my farm, I probably wouldn't use it. There are some farmers who do it. I just don't think I would. I think it does too much damage to the sunflowers. If it was me, I'd rather have my 2 pre-emerge herbicides out there, and hopefully I have good enough broadleaf control. I don't need that post-emerge shot.
All of that talk is about conventional sunflowers. Now, we do have some herbicide-tolerant sunflower options. For example, you could use Clearfield sunflowers and spray Beyond. Now, that's a great product for many weeds, but again, it's an ALS herbicide, so you have to be concerned a little bit about weed resistance. If you've got kochia as your main weed and you've got ALS-resistant kochia in your area, you're kind of out of luck.
Or ALS-resistant water hemp, for example.
But Beyond is an awesome product. There's a number of weeds that it's going to control, and if you are comparing to conventional sunflowers versus Clearfield, you've got a lot better option for weed control.
Well, the other option is Express Sun sunflowers, and there you can spray Express post-emerge. You're probably familiar with Express in wheat. Express has been around for a lot of years. Again, it's an ALS herbicide, but it does have pretty good control on a lot of different weeds. So a lot of farmers say, boy, I'm going to plant these Express Sun sunflowers. That's great. It's just you can only use Express. You can only use the DuPont product because the generics are not going to be labeled.
Well, there aren't a lot of weed control options with sunflowers, so you have to do things timely and you have to do them right. Using a combination of a grass control pre-emerge herbicide in addition to a broadleaf control herbicide is the best program that we can come up with for sunflowers. You're going to get most of those weeds before they ever emerge. Then the other things will have to be cultural management practices. That's your best weed control options in sunflowers.
Or, of course, you can plant those herbicide-tolerant options, Clearfield or Express Sun as well. Well, either way, you're probably going to want to get our Weed of the Week under control. It's a tough weed to stop, but we'll tell you how to do it on your farm coming up later in the show.
For lower costs and higher production, see your Mandaco dealer. Ask about the best production-built land roller on the market. Mandaco, simple design for easy transport and easy use. 12 to 62 foot widths, heavy-duty 4x8 by 3/8 inch tube frame, and now available with a steerable wing wheel. Mandaco land rollers. Improved soil to seed contact, faster, more uniform germination, less moisture loss. Eliminate downtime due to rocks. See your Mandaco dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call 877-915-8790.
You expect a lot from this seed. And as it grows through each stage of development, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers is there, feeding your crop exactly what it needs when it needs it. So no matter how you fertilize, no matter when, Agro Liquid efficiently brings all the nutrients your crop needs for a great harvest. From 1 kernel in the ground to 600 on the ear. For better yields and better quality, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers.
For years, FarmLogic has been the easiest and most convenient way to keep up with your farming operations. Well, it just got better. Introducing FarmPad for your phone. You always have your phone with you, so entering records as they happen is as easy as a touch of a button. Chemical database, GPS, service records, and more. When you do it on the farm, save it on your phone and it's backed up forever. Call or visit farmlogic.com for a free trial and find out why FarmLogic is the best decision tool for the farm.
Everything is better to the power of Nutrisphere N. Proven to shield against leaching, volatilization, and denitrification, Nutrisphere N Nitrogen Fertilizer Manager helps you maximize the efficiency of your nitrogen applications. In fact, research shows that in 184 corn trials, Nutrisphere N increases yields by an average of 13.2 bushels per acre. Do the math for yourself. Contact your local fertilizer dealer today and take your operation to the power of Nutrisphere N.
There are more mouths to feed than ever before. What are farmers doing to meet the challenge? They're using agronomically designed equipment from Case IH. Our Quadtrac technology, soil management, and planting systems are designed to foster a better growing environment that helps farmers maximize yield potential. And our deep understanding of agriculture is preparing them for the challenges ahead. Will you be ready?
I'm ready.
Go to caseih.com to learn more.
Farm financing. This has gotten to be a lot bigger issue since all the inputs have gone up a lot more. Fertilizer is about 5 times more expensive than it was half a dozen years ago. Seed costs a lot more money. Ag chem, well, that's roughly flat, but farmers are using more ag chem products, so even though the pricing is about flat, ag chem usage is up overall. So you got all these things going out there. Equipment costs more, land costs more, everything costs more. As a farmer, you've got to have a lot of financing lined up.
Well, here's the thing, Brian, though. If you're a young farmer and you're just getting started, it's really tough right now because everything is so expensive. You have to handle so much money to be able to put a crop in. But if you're a farmer that's been established and you've got 30 or 40 years under your belt, you own a little bit of land, your equipment's paid for, my goodness, you've got some capital right now on your balance sheet.
Yeah, and you have some options. And this is the main thing that we always try to stress to young farmers. Really, really, really work hard on your balance sheet. Because if you've got a good balance sheet, then usually you're able to borrow more money and you're able to borrow it at a lower interest rate. And you start looking at interest rates, and if you can borrow for 1 to 2% less over 30 years, boy, that really adds up in terms of total dollars.
Well, and you know, we always talk about all the seminars that you could go to over the winter and how you should go to some agronomy seminars and step up your production. Maybe you need to go to an accounting seminar if this isn't your strength and learn a little bit more about some of those things you can do to make some more money on paper, or at least make things look better, and find out really where your dollars are going. Because a lot of us, you know, get to the end of the year and say, well, you know, I made some money, so it was a good year. Yes, but if you can control your expenses just a little bit better and you can manage your money a little more effectively, you can make even more money and get ahead faster.
Okay, so if you're going to borrow money, you have some options out there that you didn't used to have. Now there are a whole bunch of third-party lenders who are willing to loan you money, and even retailers who are willing to loan you money.
Well, Brian, everybody says, you know, we're an ag banker. We're your friend on the farm. All of a sudden, you know, it's amazing over the last few years, everybody wants to be our friend on the farm.
Well, yeah, it's changed a little bit here in just the last few years since farmers have started making some decent money. But you know, we had about a 30-year stretch there that was pretty tough, and so a lot of farmers were turning to these other third-party options. And I guess I just wanted to explain real quick, if you're not familiar with this, what will happen at a lot of ag retailers is you say, well, I want to pick some product up. They aren't the ones who actually make the charge. Yes, they might write it up right there, but they then sell your loan off to somebody else, or immediately they work on having you sign the papers with someone else. So it's really a third-party lender. But the problem is a lot of times those third-party lenders charge a fee to that retailer. It might be 2%, it might be 4%. All I know is it's significant in terms of total dollars. And the reason why I bring all that up is I kind of come back to the whole local bank thing. If you can work with your local bank, a lot of times that's going to be your lowest cost source of funding.
All right, well, what about this problem? Because we've talked to a lot of farmers around the first of the year that said, man, I want to take advantage of the prepaid buying opportunities, but I think there's going to be a great opportunity for me to sell my crop in the spring and summer months when everybody else is out. So how do I get someone to finance me really 2 years crop, because I want to hold on to mine and sell later?
This is just a discussion that you have to have with your banker. Your banker has to understand what's going on. And yeah, maybe you need a credit line for 2 years rather than just 1 year, but you've got to have that banker understanding what's going on with this whole situation and really having a comfort level with you. So all we're trying to say today is we just want you to run these numbers. And I know if you're a 65-year-old farmer, you say, well, that's elementary. I've been working on that for years. I realize that. But a lot of the young farmers haven't. And a lot of them have their dads or their grandpas take care of a lot of these things. And that's who we're specifically speaking to today. We want you to get comfortable with talking to the banker. And in order to do that, you've got to speak in his terms. In other words, you've got to start talking about things on your farm in terms of net return on investment and net APR return on investment, and learn about some of these banking terms. It doesn't take very long, but if you do all those things and you start talking in those terms, you're going to have a lot better success with the banker, most likely.
And we talk a lot about farm transition on our show too, from one generation to the next. And turning over control of the books is one of the hardest things for a lot of guys to do. Yeah, but you have to get that young generation trained, and you have to have them in on these conversations so they can take over when needed.
Yeah, but it's not just that. One of the biggest things when the transition takes place is how much capital does that young farmer have? And now where you were able to borrow for a prime interest rate, now the bank wants to loan him prime plus 2%. Well, you start adding that up over, a period of years, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially in extra interest cost. So you've got to look at all these things. And I know it's not easy. We're just throwing out a lot of things to you today, but especially if you're a young farmer, we want you thinking about this, because this is another way that you can make more money on the farm if you can borrow for less. And we want you always thinking about, what if I pay cash? What's my net cost on things? And try to do that as much as you possibly can.
And one of the things you may need to spend a little cash on is controlling our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
You work to protect your farm's legacy and to keep it going. Introducing the Enlist Weed Control System, an advanced herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate for exceptional control of tough weeds. The next chapter begins.
Our weed of the week is stinging nettle. Darren, I think this is your favorite weed of all time.
Well, it used to be one of my least favorite weeds because, as kids on the farm, we like to explore. So we'd go out in the tree belts and through the tall grass and maybe running around. And all of a sudden we'd realize, man, my hand really itches, or my arm really itches, or if we were dumb enough to be wearing shorts and running through a patch of stinging nettle, my legs really itch.
Yeah, we learned really quickly, always wear pants in the tree grove.
Well, the other thing we learned, Brian, is we can't let weeds go, even in the tree grove. We were good at controlling weeds out in the field. We understood how important that was. Even the lawn in front of the house, we knew, wow, Dad would be really upset if we let some dandelions or something go. But in the tree groves, we didn't really think about it because, we didn't look at them every day. And when we found out stinging nettle was really an annoying weed, that was probably one of the first weeds in the tree groves that we said, man, we really got to spray the tree groves too.
Yep, so what we ended up doing is going out there and using 2,4-D. Now, if you want to go out and use 2,4-D in your tree groves and you do that in the middle of the summer, what do you think is going to happen? There's going to be some vapor pressure. That vapor is going to go up into your tree leaves and you're going to lose a lot of leaves. So don't spray in the middle of the summer. You've got to hit this thing early in the spring, late in the fall. You do that and you shouldn't have a big problem with stinging nettle out in those tree groves.
Well, and if it does happen to spread out into your field, Status does a nice job controlling stinging nettle if it creeps into a cornfield. In soybean fields, if you have Roundup Ready soybeans or Liberty Link soybeans, you can do a nice job with them. Otherwise, you can burn it back with Flex Star and Cobra or Cadet. In wheat fields, you can do a nice job in your burn down with Sharpen. Then in crop, you can do a nice job on stinging nettle with Husky.
You can do a nice job with a bunch of things, apparently.
Well, it's not a nice weed, Brian.
Anyway, again, our weed of the week is stinging nettle. It's not that troublesome a weed all around the country. It's just, if you get it on you, if you get any of that stinging, you're gonna remember this weed for a long time.
That's all time we have for this week's weed, but Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
What are farmers doing to feed the planet? They're using Quadtrac technology, soil management, and planting systems from Case IH to foster a better growing environment that maximizes yield potential. Visit caseih.com to be ready.
If you do things right in the spring, you only get one chance to plant your crop. We'll talk about how to make that a success in today's Iron Talk. It's important to make use of all your time in the winter. I know it seems like winter is getting kind of long this year, but believe me, there's only a few days until planting time next spring. When you count up the days on the calendar, spring starts to seem pretty close. So when you're going through your planter this winter, one of the things that you want to check is your seed meters. Now there are many different types of planters out there and there are lots of different parts to look at on one style of planter versus another. But let's talk about your typical brush meter. If you've got a brush meter for planting your seed, you need to check those brushes for wear in the winter. So oftentimes we'll take the plates off those meters to make sure there's no pressure against the brushes, but eventually you have to look at the seed brushes there to make sure they aren't matted down, bent over, or really just severely worn. If they don't look perfect, first try washing them with warm soapy water. A lot of times that'll get off some buildup of seed treatment or talc, and then you can go ahead, if they look good, put them back on. That'll be just fine. However, if even washing them doesn't seem to improve things, replace the brushes. It's not that much money for all the acres that you're going to plant. The other thing is look at the plates themselves. If the grooves that the plates have in them to hold seed are worn, they're not going to be nearly as effective next spring. So if you need to replace some seed plates, do it. It's not that much expense for the importance of getting that planter to work correctly. So this winter, make sure planting season goes very smoothly for you and you do an accurate job putting your seed in the ground. Check those seed meters out now while you have some time. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show. Don't miss this year's free Ag PhD Winter Workshops. At Ag PhD, we're all about helping you raise better crops and earn more money on your farm. We'll talk about drought-proofing your crop, weed and rootworm resistance, how to improve your fertility program, and on-farm trials and field tests. We'll also tell you the good and bad about the new products and technologies on the market, and give you our recommendations for pest control and a host of different crops. You'll get some insights on new farm regulations and tax laws going forward, and as always, you'll receive a free agronomy manual. Learn more and sign up today at agphd.com.
Speed, strength, and efficiency make Capello corn heads a head above the rest. Built with polymer components that exceed industry standards, Capello corn heads continue to push the boundaries for maximizing grain retention while using less energy. Visit CapelloUSA.com and learn more about Capello's state-of-the-art chopping technology that cuts cleaner, allowing your horsepower to remain where it belongs, with your combine, so you can harvest faster in all weather conditions. Add to that an amazing folding feature, and it's clear to see why Capello is a head above the rest.
You can't fill a barrel any fuller than its lowest stave, and your crops can't do any better than the nutrient that's in shortest supply. Your yield potential is only as good as the weakest nutrient in your fertilizer program. Give your crops more than just NPK. Prescription apply all the micronutrients your crop needs, each one customized for your crop's potential. MicroLink, linking yield to potential.
There are more mouths to feed than ever before. What are farmers doing to meet the challenge? They're using agronomically designed equipment from Case IH. Our Quadtrac technology, soil management, and planting systems are designed to foster a better growing environment that helps farmers maximize yield potential. And our deep understanding of agriculture is preparing them for the challenges ahead. Will you be ready?
I'm ready.
Go to caseih.com to learn more.
For lower costs and higher production, Mandaco leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving in rocks and has contour conformity equaling zero downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted coulter angles make residue management easier and less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandaco Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandaco dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call 877-915-8790.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
The all-new S-Cube commercial tender is the only tender on the market with poly tanks, giving you the capability to haul seed, fertilizer, water, or liquid fertilizer. Each cube can hold 300 units of seed, 2,000 gallons of liquid, or 300 cubic feet of fertilizer. Options include full functioning wireless remote, stainless steel conveyors, and self-contained hydraulics. Get yours today at Norwood Sales.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but be sure to join us again next time for a Farm Basics, Weed of the Week, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
Only 11.6 cents per dollar spent on food in America goes back to American farmers and agribusinesses. Where does the other 88.4% go, and what really raises food prices? Visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org to find out.